People ask me all the time, what is Indelible Grace music? And sometimes it is a little hard to define. The way I think of it is a community of friends that fell in love with these old hymn texts, many of whom are artists in their own right and have their own projects, but we've all come together around these hymn texts and wanted to add our voice to the hymn tradition and also share the gifts that God has given us with the larger church. So I think the first time I visited an RUF meeting was when I was teaching the college Sunday school class at Christ Community here in Nashville, and I went to the RUF meeting at Vanderbilt that had just started. And I was struck by the fact that here people were singing psalms and hymns, a couple of them to contemporary tunes, a lot of them to just traditional tunes adapted for guitar. And these college students were singing at the top of their lungs and loving this. And I guess I'd always been looking, I guess, for a model of depth in ministering to college students, and I hadn't seen many examples of that, but I was instantly struck. Yeah, so then in seminary, I roomed with Brian Habig and got to meet other RUF trained guys and learn some of the RUF songs, some of the core songs. Really, Habig's the guy that taught me all that stuff. And then when I graduated seminary, I started RUF at Belmont here in Nashville, which meant I had a bunch of singer-songwriter students. I was also working at Christ Community Church and a lot of music folks down there.
We started singing hymns, old hymns, new music, when I was in college, and I went to Belmont University in '95, and so right around that time there was a college group meeting that later became Belmont's RUF group. So at the time it was Vanderbilt RUF and Christ Community Church and a blend of different college age folks meeting in one form or another. And we would regularly sing together at these meetings with acoustic guitars and these old hymns with more of a folky melody to these songs. And so some of them were traditional melodies that we started singing, and we loved to sing all 8 verses or however many verses there were.
I remember right after college, I went to RUF for 3 of my 4 years of college after I transferred to Belmont, and all during that we sang a lot of the hymns that RUF does already. It was already an RUF tradition to take old hymns and put them to new music. So there were a number of those that Greg Thompson and Chris Minor and other people were doing. And along the way, seeing as how a whole bunch of us were songwriters, Kevin started putting hymnals in our hands. And he gave me a copy of the Gadsby hymns. And it was this little blue book. And when he gave it to me, it was already laminated. Like he had already put some kind of material over the cover so that it would last for a really long time, which is good because it gets thoroughly used.
I really first discovered hymns when I first discovered RUF. Going into the RUF meeting, they were playing these hymns that had these amazing words that I'd never really heard before because I didn't grow up singing that many hymns. And they were, Kevin was up there leading the music, and I was just completely captivated by them. And then every few weeks he would make photocopies of hymn lyrics and kind of hand them out or make them available and say, hey, this particular hymn needs a new tune, if anybody wants to try their hand at it. And one week he handed out a hymn called Come Ye Sinners, and I sat down that night and in the course of an hour wrote music to it and played it for him, and he liked it. And soon after that he decided to record a bunch of these hymns just to make them available. Really the thought was get these hymns out to other RUF chapters around the country and to other churches, and make it really as a resource. We didn't have any kind of grand plan or grand design on what would happen.
Kevin encouraged me to write, to write, and he would start kind of passing some of us just different texts that he thought needed new melodies, and so he was the primary encouragement for that, and we also learned just by watching him do that and watching other writers do that in our community. Scott Rowley and Craig Brown, and who's now the pastor of our church. I mean, it's just really interesting to see how this one family of people just has kind of splintered out into so many different places that are doing similar work to the Indelible Grace CDs. And you know, that it's really a movement that's gained its own momentum regardless of our tiny piece in that bigger story.
As we would create together, as we would play together and grieve together and hang out together and travel together, those hymns were part of our regular conversation, part of our life and how we work things out together, and they still are. Come around 10 or 11 years later.
I feel like a proud father when I see all these former students now with their own children. And you just see the legacy that this music has built into their lives, and to see them even passing it on. Well, it was so amazing. We had a release party for our last CD, and for Oh Love That Will Not Let Me Go, we invited all the people that had been part of that CD and all of their kids to come up on stage to sing together. And it was really overwhelming to think, because these were my kids 10 years ago, these students, and now they've got kids of their own, and you're seeing the way this music and this gospel has shaped them, and that's one of the things I love about college ministry. You just never know what God is going to do.
So maybe not like a big notey solo. Yeah, I know. Yeah, maybe have like 2 or 3 instruments, do something like vibrato.
Amazing things about doing these CDs has been, starting with the first one, it's always been kind of Kevin's vision for the music, and it continues to be, but to see how he's incorporated our community even more and more in the production process and seeing these hymns come to life has been a really great thing.
One of the things that's really exciting to me is I hear stories about, college students searching in old bookstores for old hymnals, and just to see the influence that this movement has had. And in Indelible Grace, we always think about wanting to nurture a movement. It's not just about making CDs, it's about what can we invest in that will nurture this movement. And so it gets me so excited. The first CD, I think I wrote like 10 of the songs, but all the CDs after that, I only wrote a couple, which is so integral to the RUF philosophy of ministry that we want to teach and demonstrate for the students, but we want them to pick up the baton and take it and run with it.
Beams of heaven as I go through this wilderness below, guide my feet in peaceful ways, turn my midnight.
I think that the hymns they just have more depth, they have more transcendence, they have because so many of these texts were written years and years ago, they kind of transcend a lot of our cultural blind spots. So these hymn writers wrote about things that were true to the life of a believer and a follower of Jesus then, and the ones that have really lasted, I think, continue to tell that same story without a lot of the trappings of living in the year 2010.
The hymns have done something for me and my family, to where, in our community of friends, to where I think we're able to see Jesus for who he is, in a more fuller and more beautiful way because of the lyrics to these songs. And they just break your heart. They're so beautiful that they break your heart, and when your heart gets broken, all sorts of really good things happen because the gospel works its way in and redeems you, recreates you, renews you. And that's really, for me, I mean, that's really the big theme of my interaction with these songs.
I think it's important for people to understand that this really grew out of ministering to college students. It grew out of pastorally trying to care for them and trying to get the gospel into their heart. And along the way, I discovered that it was really me who needed the gospel in my heart more than just in my head. And these hymn texts have just been really remarkable in their ability to get the truths of the gospel into my heart, to impress upon my heart that Jesus is more beautiful and believable than all the various things that vie for my heart's affection.
They tell the story of the gospel in a way that gives voice to the deepest parts of me, and maybe other songs do that for other people, but there's something about these hymns that do that, and writing music for them has been just a tremendous joy in being able to really feel like these hymns reflect who I am and teach me about who God is.
You know, hymns don't water down reality. That's the truth. We do ourselves, in our community, in our families, in our friends, in the world, a disservice when we don't sit in reality. The gospel is all about reality. So what these hymns have taught me is to sit in reality with the gospel, to not leave all my problems and all my struggles at home, but actually take them with me to church, to my community, and sing these songs. Actually sing these songs to my struggles, you know, because that's what they're for. The gospel's for our realities, not for some cotton candy thing we've constructed on our own. You know, I was so thankful to find that out because I grew up with that sort of worldview a little bit of, you know, don't get too honest because who knows what would happen then, you know. And you come across these lyrics that are nothing but honest and drenched in the gospel, and it really does set you free. That's what happened to me.